Mic on, smile on, and we're all good.
Hello, good morning. Welcome to this first webinar of the series of webinars and activities of the year 2021 for Encryption Europe. So today we are welcoming two CISOs of the year of Luxembourg. We are very proud of having both of them, the latest who got the award last year and the year before. So thank you, Jelena and Stéphane. I will introduce you in a few moments. And we have one of our member of Encryption Europe, Schumacher for web security. So today what we want to focus on is on the positive. So how encryption and in particular end-to-end encryption can help industry to protect against criminals. So a few words about Encryption Europe. Most of you know you. I recognize the many names. So it's almost a small family, despite we are quite a good number of people this morning. So Encryption Europe, we are an alliance of SMEs, 8 SMEs, an organization founded in 2019 to promote encryption positively and also to protect it from potentially bad regulation. I'll come to this later, and throughout the year you will be we'll have many opportunities to work with us and work on these two aspects of our topic today. So today I said we focus on the positive, how encryption can help protect against fraudsters and criminals. Unfortunately, COVID has only increased the pressure on the industry, on people, and on CISOs who are defending us. And we'll touch on this obviously throughout this session. So the agenda for this morning is basically, well, a few high-level remarks from our two CISOs on the threat landscape, just to make sure we are all on the same page. Then Leon will tell us about the challenges faced in particular by the financial sector. And we will invite Jelena and Stephane to comment whether they recognize the specific challenges that Leon will have described to us. And then we will go on with possible ways to address these threats. And this will be a presentation by Leon. Let me introduce now our speakers. So ladies first, Jelena Zelenovic Matone is a CISO of the European Investment Bank since 2019. Actually, Jelena is coming from Canada. I mean, where she came to Europe in 6 years ago in 2014, and she has been with the EIB since 2019. One of her motto, and she's a leader to women in IT, and I would definitely recommend to watch the video of on YouTube on women in IT security, where Jelena provides all our guidance and her view on the threat landscape. So it's a 15-minute video, very interesting, with a lot of information that we will not have time to share with us today. So you can catch up on this. And so Jelena is also president of Women for Cyber Foundation, the Women for Cyber Foundation, since a few weeks ago. So a lot of hats on Jelena, and her motto is be steadfast and be confident if you know what you know. Of course, I mean, don't be foolish, but when you know what you know, then you should be steadfast and confident. So Jelena, I will send over to you. I will just then I will introduce Stephane right before his high-level remarks. So you can go next slide. And so to begin with, I'm sorry, actually, that's for Stephane to start with the presentation. So I will start with Stephane. Sorry for my mistake. So Stéphane Bianchin is the CISO of the year 2020, and Jelena was the CISO of the year 2019. He has been working for the financial sector for 10 years, for the industry and cybersecurity for 20 years. And I think what he's known for and appreciated for, and probably this is why he got the award, is for being pragmatic, for being someone who listens, who cares about his colleagues, who finds the right balance of really a CISO that's with which you feel in good hands, and so he will tell us about what he sees, what you see on this slide. So Stephane will tell us about the high-level picture on the fraud, the phishing attacks that he sees, not himself necessarily, but with his colleagues at the moment. And Jelena will focus more on the cyber attacks and SWIFT. So, but let's begin with the scams and whether are there still these threats. So, Stephane, how do you see these types of threats as of today?
I'm sorry, I was muted. So once again, hello everybody, and thanks Jean-Christophe for your introduction. So as you said, I'm the CISO of the Banque Raiffeisen, so it's a middle bank in Luxembourg, and I'm in charge of the governance and drafting the security policies. So I must be aware about the threats for the company, and as a CISO in 2021, my main concern is about being the victim of a crypto virus or a ransomware or Trojan. Simply said, being the victim of successful social engineering attacks. And phishing attacks, scam attacks are more and more targeting banks in Luxembourg, and we are currently the target of these kind of attacks, and they are of two kinds. The ones that are targeting our customers, so we are more talking about phishing attacks to get personal information, e-banking, credential, credit card information, and we are working hard on providing information to our customers, improving the security awareness for the customers through the website, through direct message and communication to the customers, but it's still limited. And we are working inside a group that has been set up by one of our identity provider, a well-known identity provider in Luxembourg, to set up a cross-bank collaboration platform to share information and to be more reactive on this kind of attacks, phishing attacks that are targeting the customer of the banks. And in the other end, we also have some attacks that are targeting our employees. So we are more focusing in this case of something like the scams, the CEO scams. And the goal for the hacker is either to perform fraudulent payment transaction or to lure people in clicking or installing some rogue program, so a malware. And it's one of my concerns to ensure that we are protecting against this kind of intrusion into the corporate network. And once again, we are working hard on improving the security awareness program, so to ensure that employees are aware about what they are doing. But for me, there is still some lack into the technology part, and I would like to be able to also rely on a technical solution to ensure that emails communication can be more secure, you know, are authenticated, and they are also hid against unauthenticated, unauthorized modification, and to protect also the confidentiality of this exchange.
Thank you, Stephane. And indeed, we see a lot of focus these days on privacy and confidentiality. I mean, it seems that people do care about this more and more. So I would like to ask you a question, but I will wait for the Q&A, and I will move to Jelena. So next slide, please. Because when we prepared this discussion, there was basically two type of threats that we found, and one was the social engineering, the social techniques to get into the bank or reach out to the client, and then there was the other side of more technically maybe sophisticated, and in particular there was we discussed this big Swift hack, and then the question was, okay, what's the situation today? What are the lessons learned? And then we said, okay, Jelena will help us deal with this part. So Jelena, over to you.
Thank you, Jean-Christophe. And I would like to thank you for a great introduction and mentioning our also Foundation for Women for chapter. And we'll be doing some great things on this. But to go back to your question on the SWIFT and the big hack on the BCP, Bangladesh Central Bank, indeed we can discuss a lot, and indeed my peer also has discussed now, Stephane has discussed some of the phishing attacks, and we have a lot of SWIFT hacks in general and phishing attacks that have only, I can say, diversified and multiplied during the COVID time. But here I have to say one thing, from our practice perspective, from a cybersecurity perspective, InfoSec, that I would say it's rather irrelevant. Was it because people talk about insiders, hackers? I think this part is rather irrelevant as to what happened here. We failed to actually highlight the criticality and budget of our professions and how much we need people in our fields and knowledgeable people to do this. And hence we allow for such failures to come. And the complete impact of this Bangladesh attack was avoided only, and this is something really critical to say, only due to the poor spelling mistake that was made by the attackers and not by any security controls that we are talking about here. And this is something to really highlight, these basic cybersecurity hygiene. And some attackers, being persistent and determined, will most probably be able to find and exploit any of the given weaknesses. You give it in the form of a human error or any network vulnerability. But what this incident also highlights is the ever-growing need for the heightened security and the need for strong security protocols throughout our organizations and companies out there. And one thing I can say, the lessons learned that I can talk about for this internal SWIFT system, bank's internal SWIFT system and issues, they have been made even more vulnerable because it was found out that they were linked to common payment platforms that were meant for countries' commercial banks. And this is a good reminder for all of us, and especially in financial industry, how heavily we rely on our third-party service providers for our critical banking functions. So third-party, very important to have is third-party evaluations and risks, and look into them, look at the controls they have and who you deal with, because you're only as strong as your weakest link. Another lessons learned is that standard business users should never have full admin access rights, and this could have been avoided. Segmenting of the highly sensitive systems from the rest of your IT network is another lesson learned. We see it's normal for retailers, for the PCI environments where they segment them. Secure privileged account credentials. Look into this, do the proper analysis on who has it, look and monitor what's happening on that side. Monitor and analyze all the privileged account activities and what's happening there. Again, budget, resource, understanding of what we need. Control applications on endpoint and servers, so do the whitelisting, proper whitelisting, and look at the risk tolerance that you're gonna accept from this. And I would say, it's not to underestimate the attack. I would say the attack was highly well planned. However, it was not so sophisticated. If we had done, if the bank had done at the time some proper basic cybersecurity hygiene, it could have been maybe avoided at the time. And so we have to think about employing multi-factor authentication, controlling and monitoring the use of privileged accounts on this example itself, and finding those potentially malicious behaviors and quickly responding to such behaviors within the organizations. It's not the first time, it's not the last time that this will happen probably. And as I said at the beginning of my talk here, it will just diversify and intensify in many different forms through the social engineering.
Thank you, Jelena, and thank you both of you to stick to the short time to give feedback, because that was, we have a packed hour. So and both of you highlight, I mean, how we have to work on the basics and the dimension of also reach out to others and cooperate, and that's not necessarily something in the culture of CISOs. I mean, in the past, and the financial sector itself is quite, I mean, unique and specific in its own right, and so developing this human dimension with the technology is really on point. We will now go a little deeper in the what are the exact challenges from a view from someone external. Some description which is also global. I mean, not addressed at any particular bank or organization. So this is Léon Schumacher from PEP Security, who co-founded this company 6 years ago. He's a CEO and co-founder. So the background of Léon is he has been the CIO of Mittal Steel and Novartis, so he knows very well, I mean, the beauty and the capability, but also the challenges of large organizations. He now built so his company so he also knows the beauty and challenges of developing a company from scratch, and keep in mind that Encryption Europe brings together SMEs, European SMEs, and so what we hear from Léon is, okay, what are the issues, what are the possibilities, and then we will listen from Jelena and Stephane, okay, whether this description sounds, I mean, for them, from their perspective, fair, and what are the issues. So, Léon, over to you.
Well, JC, thank you very much for having me, and thanks for introducing me. As JC said, I was group CIO of a couple of large companies before I threw myself at privacy and cybersecurity, which I've now been doing over 10 years. And I'll start here with talking a little bit about the issues that we have come across, and then basically line that up for the discussion, and maybe later on one approach on how one can tackle a great number of them. The first one, I just wanted to put that on because during my time as CIO, for 10-15 years, we have pushed hard to centralize more and more and more, and which was nice to optimize cost and get the data together. But from a security point of view, that's not necessarily perfect. Like, for example, the SolarWinds hack has shown, if you have centralized solutions, it's a winner-takes-all scenario. The winner takes the app, the server, the whole security zone. So if you have solutions and security solutions, key management solutions that are central, once the attacker takes that central system, the game is over. He has captured the whole thing. The Department of Justice in the US with its email systems and so forth as a result of the SolarWinds attack is one example. Then if I move on to the next point, I'll pick up on what Jelena said before. The ideal thing that you have in your infrastructure is a whitelisting. If you can whitelist on each system, which system can speak to it, that's the perfect solution. But very few organizations are able to put in place a perfect whitelisting. Most have to work with a blacklisting where they exclude what they don't want and everything else comes through. And the larger the bank, I think that the bigger the challenge of authenticating messages and tracing them, which opens the door to the injection of fake messages. Many banks run IBM MQ, and if you have access to the right certificate, anybody can inject a message in the queue, and this message will be accepted and treated down the road. There is nowhere a check with certificates if this message actually came from the right system and should be accepted. So that's a very big topic. It links to also the modification of existing messages. This is basically what happened at the Bangladesh bank, where Jelena is right as well. It only was discovered because somebody made a typo somewhere. Otherwise, the whole billion would have disappeared. Now I think it was only 80 million or something that ended up getting lost. Another situation that we face, and where companies also have no control over are backdoors in black boxes. In 2000, multiple were discovered. You had the Swiss Crypto AG, you had a Cisco example where in the code even they named the software, I think, Secret Service.gsp and things like that. Sixcell had one. Omnisec had one. In the Omnisec case, also the UBS bank in Switzerland was affected. And those are issues that will come back if you buy equipment that are black boxes where you have no visibility on what is inside. So that's one thing to keep in mind. The other thing that we see regularly is that the high complexity that has been built up, which is usually increasing with the age and the size of the bank, makes it very hard to keep yourself protected in the best way. I've come across banks that because of the legacy they have in place, they are still stuck with technologies like TLS 1.0 in their back office and no way to get rid of that without enormous amounts of upgrade costs and replacing systems and things that are not reasonably to be expected in the near future. The other thing that came also as a result of the Bangladesh hack is that SWIFT and the regulators have pushed more compliance programs on the banks. Like SWIFT CSP is a program that becomes more and more strict as time goes forward. I think this is the first year where banks will need to have independent audits of these compliance, and there's about 20 controls that are mandatory and 10 that are advisory, and the advisory ones are becoming then more and more mandatory as time goes forward. So those are all challenges that many of you have to deal with, and I'm sure there are other elements that need to be added to the list, so hopefully they will come up in the discussion. And let's go to the next slide, please. So when we talk a little bit more specific about end-to-end encryption, we face the issue in email that email in general is not a safe technology. That's why you would actually need encryption on email to use it, but the technologies that have been available to us so far are just unusable for the end user. I think at Novartis, I had to deploy the tool to encrypt with third parties. This is more than 10 years ago. We gave it to 80,000 employees, and if 80 people sent 50 messages with it, then it was a successful project. We could as well have put the money down the Rhine River and have a few German or French citizens happy by pulling money out of the water. I think most companies have deployed some gateways to encrypt messages at the gateway, but very few reach 1 or 2% of emails that are being encrypted with those solutions. On messaging, end-to-end encryption is a challenge because people tend to use WhatsApp and similar things that cannot be recorded by the organization and then cause then other compliance challenges. If I move from there to, let's say, system messages or messages that are sent by core systems or gateways, payment gateways, and so forth, the challenge with end-to-end encryption is that normally you cannot access those messages for checks that are necessary. You might have to do anti-money laundering checks, fraud checks, embargo checks on those messages before you basically transact them. And end-to-end encryption makes that impossible, or at least it made it impossible until now. We have all the challenges around certificate management. Everything that's done today is based on certificates, and the whole management of the certificates is manual. So this is a big headache for most organizations. I'm used to at least once or twice a year that somebody forgot to renew a certificate, and we had some systems shut down, and that's part of the course and of the headaches that you usually see. I think with the certificates also, we see more and more pressure to do away with self-signed certificates, even though one can debate if they are not the better solutions than the commercial ones. But I think in the market, the push is to go further and further for commercial ones, and that of course opens another risk factor that the commercial CAs have a very bad reputation. If you look at the history, many CAs got hacked, got taken over, issued fake certificates and similar things, and that even puts any control measure out of the hands of the bank or the corporate that relies on it. The additional thing is, of course, the complexity of running all this security infrastructure, PKIs, HSMs, VPNs, TLS. I think those things combined are probably causing the largest amount of headaches globally, because they are very difficult to manage and not easy to set up correctly. And if one could do away with all that complexity, that would be nice. I will stop here, basically just saying that there are solutions and approaches how one can solve or mitigate most of those points, but I'll leave it at that now, and maybe we'll come back to that later. So, JC, back to you.
Thank you. So what we are going to do now, we have about a 10-minute Q&A discussion, and then we will continue on the positive side with Leon back, and to tell us about, okay, how to address these issues. An initial question just to frame the discussion, and to maybe to Jelena first, and then Stephane. To Jelena, I mean, what we at Encryption Europe, what surprises us still today is outside of the financial sector, and that my question will be about your perspective on the financial sector, but outside of the financial sector, including in sensitive environments, so in sectors who should be very concerned about confidentiality of communication, we find that the people in IT are not necessarily super aware or interested about encryption. They know about it, and but they say, well, yes, okay, we know we should probably do something, and maybe one day we should work on it. But really, there is not much focus, and it may have to do with the issues listed by Leon. But how would you rate or compare the financial sector versus other sectors when it comes to encryption? I mean, do you think it's still a very early topic, even for financial sector, or do you think you're much ahead? Certainly, we hear about hospitals and health who are much behind the financial sector. So what would be your assessment in terms of understanding of the necessity to look at encryption as a way to protect the business?
So perhaps I can just put few words on this one. I believe, I mean, talking to my peers, looking in, with people that you work with and on a daily basis, I think people are aware. It's not that there's a lack of awareness on the encryption, but we have to think about other things. We have to think about resource. We have to think about budgeting. We have to think about complexities of implementing encryption and how they will work with all the systems that we have. So it's not just one thing. It's many things that are put together, and perhaps that's it. That's what takes time. So just think about encryption. People are aware, and people know that we need it, and we all, I would say, agree. At least the peers I talk to, that it is a good solution. It's just getting there, looking at the impacts that this will have on everything you're going to do and how the systems will work is one of the biggest, I guess, not showstoppers, but one of the challenges actually in our field. So also talking to the business, making them understand the same things and what are the benefits and how this will work. So it's very complex. It's not just about encryption, but I would say it's also about other things that I said, budget, resource, and complexity of implementing that and interconnecting with the different systems that you have within your organization.
Thank you, Jelena. I will go over to Stéphane. Maybe, Laurent, you want to comment on this maybe before?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I think one of the challenges is also the understanding what is possible and the priority of it. We have had cases where you could say, okay, here we face a very high risk, and it's quite could have, if this risk comes through, it could have a very bad impact on, let's say, a whole country network. But I would have slept very badly if I was responsible for the situation. But other people just took it a lot easier and did not move forward. I think everybody wants to take out cost and complexity and so forth, but to basically show them what is possible is one of the challenges that we have encountered. We have some solutions that are quite revolutionary and take out significantly amount of cost and complexity, and are much cheaper. But getting the people to understand and then try it out has been one of the hurdles that we needed to overcome.
Thank you, Leo. I would to have another high-level question to Stephane about whether you find some differences between some types of organizations. So when we look at, okay, if the financial sector understand about encryption, but then there are all these issues and the priorities and the budget and everything, would you, I mean, is there a kind of distinction between, okay, some types, I mean, larger companies, larger organizations may have more difficulties to implement encryption because of the complexity, or are there some types of organization like between insurance companies, between retail banks, between investment banks? I mean, are there some nuances in terms of the maturity, those who are facing like CEO frauds? I mean, maybe you have a different response than those who are more remote from individual clients. So is there such a kind of distinction among certain types of financial companies?
Yes, so I will talk about my personal experience. I'm working in Luxembourg for 20 years now, and I started in the payment card industry, which is an industry which is regulated by a data security standard. And I think it's because it's the beginning of the financial fraud. It was really easy to steal payment cards number and to use it instead of trying to introduce the bank system to try to inject fraudulent payment transaction. And I say 20 years ago, the payment card industry, so Visa and MasterCard, started to draft this data security standard, the PCI DSS standard, which is really strict on data protection and have strong requirement about encryption. And I worked on a solution to protect information, to encrypt information that is transferred across the corporate network and then across a public network like internet. The goal of this kind of solution is to prevent IT administration account to be able to see the information and to be able to modify the information. So it's not only to protect the information against employees. It's not about a question of trust regarding employees. It's also a question of the fact that these IT accounts could be compromised by an insider. And it's some fraud cases that happened 20 years ago in the payment card industry that lead to the introduction of this kind of standard and make a difference today with some companies that are used to comply with this strict standard, because we are talking about the SWIFT customer security program, but it's a quite new standard regarding, if I compared to PCI DSS. And you talk also about the health industry, and there are also some standards, some requirements, but it's once again not as enforced as some others could be enforced. And I think if we're talking about difference between companies or different maturity level in the implementation of encryption or any kind of security measure, it's mostly based on the requirement imposed by the industry itself and the fraud cases that occurs in the past. And I think today we are facing more and more phishing attacks, and cybersecurity threat is growing. And I hope that what Jelena is saying, that we need more we need more resources and more budget to protect the company, will be heard by the top management.
Yes, thank you, Stephane. And it's what I would like to then understand from you before we hear again from Leon is a sense of the dynamic. So I would like the two of you to comment on this, starting with Jelena. My question is, when you look at the COVID, for instance, I mean, what is interesting is to look where the virus spread fastest, because then you, like, it used to be UK, then Ireland, then it used to be France before. So and then you understand, okay, the future from how much an issue is dynamic. So when you both have a lot of experience, so what I would like to hear from you is, if we look at encryption on the public debate, and we have our friends from ISOC, Internet Society, on this call, so I'll say hello to them, and I will get back about them later at the end of this session. What we see a lot of, it's extremely dynamic. 2020 has been super dynamic in terms, at least in Europe, in terms of getting encryption back in the public debate. And 2021 should be also super active. What I would like to understand from both of you is, when it comes to the implementation of encryption into the financial sector, and we know it's difficult, and we know the complexity, and Leon will address this part, by the way. So in the last 10 years, I mean, have you seen a kind of a smooth, gradual interest, understanding about encryption, or have you seen a peak as well in the past 6 months, or 1 year, 2 years, because of the threats? So what has been your what are the trends basically in terms of activity, if I could say? So Jelena, can you comment on this?
Well, we've always looked into encryption, and we looked at the solutions. I think perhaps indeed we are looking more into solutions on end-to-end encryptions and things, even more so during the COVID time, because everything has intensified and diversified in the phishing environment. And all of our peers, when I talk to them, have started looking more into the solutions. When we talk about SWIFT, automated messaging, a lot of the peers, when I talk to them, they're also looking more into how to encrypt the automated messages on SWIFT, and what to do, and how to monitor such messages to protect it. But not just SWIFT. I'm talking about also what Stephane mentioned about phishing attacks. How to encrypt some of the very confidential emails and the exchanges of those emails as well. Indeed, the interest is growing, and I think it's not just because of COVID, it's just of all the advances that are happening that also our interests are growing. And definitely, I say, it's not a bad thing to say we are always going to lag probably behind all the technological advancements that are happening, and we will probably lag also behind hackers, to say, because hackers will find the ways constantly. So yes, indeed, we are interested. We always look into new solutions. So what PEP is doing is also a great thing. They are providing solutions as the technology is advancing, as the cybersecurity threat landscape is advancing as well. So I'm very glad to see this. And I was very interested. First time I saw the product, I was very interested in it, definitely. And as a practitioner, I think all of my peers as well, the moment we see a new product, we look into it and we see if we can have a use of that product and how we can use it internally for our organizations or private sector.
Thank you, Jelena. Stephane, do you want to add to this, or did Jelena cover the topic, the question?
Yeah, I would like also to react on one question. So the question that has been raised from Boris. Sorry. So first, I would like to be sure that I have understood the concern of Boris. I think the question is about companies that are more demanding to third parties than they are from themselves. And I would not agree with this. So once again, based on my personal experience, I am, as a CISO, drafting the security requirement. And I noticed in the past that most of the companies I was working for were less demanding to the service provider than they were from their own IT department. And I think it's a question of being fair with both the IT department and the service provider. As Jelena said, it's using security due diligence to ensure that all the requirements that are imposed to the company itself must be also addressed by a service provider. And it's once again some fraud cases that occurs in the past, that if you are building a strong place and you are improving your security measure, and you have some, we say, weak, so without any offense to any service provider, if you have some weak security implemented by your service provider, then you are vulnerable by this, I would say, entry door. So if you have some communication channel with some vulnerable service provider, then you can be attacked through this channel. And it's the reason why company must have the same requirement for the security, the service providers. And it's not about being more demanding for the service provider than we are from the IT department or any other department within the company. It's to be fair and to have the same maturity level on all security controls.
Thank you, Stephane, to bring this level of nuance and balance, and to be fair. And so now we start to have questions in the chat, which is perfect. So please continue the discussion. Leon, now you will so get us through the journey of understanding what can technology do better to make the life of CISOs easier. We have discussed the fact that encryption is difficult, and the industry must help and make it more simple. So over to you, Leon.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to pick up on one point of Stephane. He was saying, look, PCI DSS and so forth, regulation has made things a lot better in the payment card industry. And I think regulation definitely helps. We have seen, for example, the SWIFT CSP program, SWIFT moved some deadlines by 12 months because of Corona. We have seen a direct impact on projects we had when that deadline moved, the deadlines for those projects moved with it. So regulation and compliance requirements definitely help getting things done and implemented to increase security. So that is definitely one thing that we should also push for, because that will help to move the needle forward. Can we go to the next slide, please? And one more. So basically what we want to spend a couple of minutes on is to just explain a little bit the PEP approach and how we go about solving some of these problems. I think the idea when we created PEP was to make end-to-end encryption easy and automatic everywhere. So allow people not to know anything and be lazy and still have secure end-to-end encryption running. Basically do for privacy what Skype did for voice over IP. Just take a complicated technology and automate it in such a way that anybody can use it. Let's move on to the next slide. PEP has two solutions today. One is focused on email, and the second one is focused on the back office, for example, financial messages and similar things. So let's quickly start with email. The goal here was to make end-to-end encryption in email as easy as it is in Signal or in WhatsApp, and in addition, keep the key management decentralized. So PEP PEP has a deep impact on turning email from a postcard that's readable by everybody into a sealed security envelope that cannot be opened by anyone but the recipient. And this is all automatic and opportunistic, meaning that the system recognizes who can encrypt in PEP or in PGP and will then encrypt automatically with those people. Because it is automated and opportunistic, you do not just have 1 or 2% encrypted emails, what you get with the traditional solutions or the email gateways and so forth, but you can reach 60 or 70% end-to-end encrypted emails. And these numbers come from a car manufacturer that made a study with consultants to take a look. What if we roll out PEP inside and then look at what our suppliers and our customers can do? What do they have in place? And then they came to the conclusion that would basically allow them to go to 60, 70% of encrypted email, even without training the users. So the other thing that is important to say, PEP for email can eliminate all CEO fraud, so anybody impersonating company employees like the CEO, the CFO, and so forth. Those cases are immediately visible, and you can even go further and also do something for your customers, but that necessitates 1 or 2 additional steps. The other thing that's important to know is that if you have PEP in place, even if somebody takes your email server, like it was the case in the Office 365 for the Department of Justice in the US, they will not get to the emails because the emails will be encrypted on the server and the keys are managed decentrally. So that would have kept the Department of Justice from losing the emails to the hackers. It does also not matter what cloud you have your email in or what geography your servers are standing in, because if the messages are encrypted on the server, you are GDPR compliant no matter what, and you don't need to worry if there is a safe harbor or a privacy shield that's valid or invalidated or any of that. We also have solutions to integrate antivirus and DLP and similar systems as are usually in place in large companies and banks to check what's going in and what's going out. Let's move on to the next slide. PEP for financial messages is a quite revolutionary solution because it eliminates huge amounts of complexity and cost while it increases the security to so far unseen levels. I know now anybody can say something like that, so I invite you not to take me by my word, but go and check for yourself afterwards. But let's take a look at a bank as depicted in a little chart here. So you have plenty of complexity that is deployed, a lot of technology combinations that needs to work together, and all these elements can be attacked. So you have the systems, you have the endpoint security on the systems, you run TLS, VPNs, HSMs, have a PKI, and then you have manual certificate and key management that you need to deal with. And you need to manage all of that. You pay for all of that. You maintain all of that, and that's a big effort and a big headache. So what does PEP do? With PEP, you just connect PEP to an application via a connector or a plugin. This happens on the application layer, and it starts working automatically with the first message that's exchanged between 2 systems. And because this happens on the application layer for all transport, so it works for MQ messaging, it works for FTPS and other web services and so forth, and that makes sure that you do not need to deploy any further security on lower levels. If we go to the next slide. So you get a huge reduction in the attack surface because you deploy PEP, and then you only have to keep one of all the things that we shown before, which is the endpoint security. That does not change. You still have to defend the endpoint, and that was one of the questions that was posted in the chat as well. As long as you defend your endpoint, you are good, because PEP makes sure that all system messages, any message that is sent, be that in Swift formats, in ISO 20022 formats, in XML formats, or whatsoever, between two systems, they are all signed, so nobody can change the content, end-to-end encrypted, so nobody can read them, and authenticated. So here you basically get the white list that you know exactly what system this message is coming from, and if it's not coming from that system, it will be discarded. So that makes a huge difference in your basically risk and security, and you have to maintain a lot less. So, and because of the automation, you also get a huge reduction in the attack window. Usually you work with certificates. Certificates are valid normally between 12 and 24 months. So if an attacker managed to steal a certificate, he can simply inject the message into a queue somewhere, and the message will be accepted. And he has 12 to 24 months to do so. Because in PEP, everything that's key or certificate management is fully automated. So the deployment of the keys, renewal of the keys, revocation, reset, and so forth, it's all automated. And that's why we can work with short-living keys. So instead of having 2 years to plan and mount an attack, the attacker has 24 hours or 72 hours to do so. And that makes it very different what can happen. And PEP is quite simple, so it's easy to install. The effort to install PEP into a core banking system is probably a day, including testing. And the cost to run it is close to zero because it's all automated. It's nothing compared to running your TLS implementation. And if you go to the next slide, a cherry on top that you get is basically you get a huge amount of help in getting Swift CSP compliant. I listed the controls over here to which we contribute. Some of them are mandatory, some of them are advisory, but we have control 2.4a, which today is advisory, but Swift has already announced that at some point it will become mandatory, which says that banks must end-to-end protect the messages in their back office. And today there's no solution that can do that. Let's say you have a core system in Singapore that generates the message, then you send it over your network, maybe it goes through Dubai, and then it comes to Luxembourg, and in Luxembourg it goes through a number of checks and is then put from the gateway onto the Swift network. It may even go over MQ messaging, then maybe there is a piece of the journey that goes over FTPS, and then it goes back to MQ. There is no technology out there today that can end-to-end protect that. PEP allows you to do that, and PEP also allows you to keep the signatures and the encryption in place while doing compliance check for AML, fraud, and similar things. These checks can even be done with visas, so you can add a signature if the check was done successfully, and all of this without breaking the encryption and the signatures. So I think I'll leave it at that. I think I invite you to not believe me, but to try it out instead for yourself in a small proof of concept or something. But it is not a technology from Silicon Valley. It's technology from Luxembourg. So I think in Europe, we have to come up with our own solutions and not necessarily rely on Silicon Valley, especially in questions of security, privacy, and encryption. And to summarize it also, what better can you ask for than having two systems where you just send one message, and then you have perfect security between them without deploying any other security infrastructure. So,
thank you, Leon. We have time for two questions. One to you, Leon, from the chat. Another one question to both Jelena and Stephane. So one question that we got from the chat was, how would you tell apart the legitimate users or system from a compromised entity taking over the encrypted channel? So basically, once it's the enemy got into the communication channel, how do you detect them? My understanding that in your case, what you say basically, guys, with your solution, you reduce the window of opportunity from 20 months to 72 hours. At least this is what you do. Is that right?
But you are right with that, but that does not eliminate the risk that's described. So the question is, how do I make sure that nobody connects a fake system that basically gives me a message if he has the right certificate? Basically, the way PEP functions, and I'm glad to take this discussion offline and continue there, but the first message that PEP sends to another system includes a public key. So once that arrives on the other side, the response will already be encrypted with that public key, and then the authentication can take place. So the two administrators pick up the phone and they call each other. And the system generates something that we call a handshake. So it will show you 10 trust words in the language of your choice. So let's say 10 words in English that one administrator reads to the other one, and the other one just confirms them or he types them in. And with that, you have the authentication of the two systems. That happens once. And from there onward, the system will renew the keys every 72 hours and whatever is necessary, or you have a single button reset that does a revocation, redeployment, and so forth. So the authentication happens to this trust word comparison, which is a little bit like if you want the fingerprint comparison of PGP, where you would have to compare two 40-digit hexadecimal strings, which is kind of a little cumbersome, as hexadecimal code and human beings don't work too well together. Did that make any sense?
I think so, yes. So I will. We are now going to just close. I would just like to give the final words, like 1 minute to Jelena, Stephane, and then I would like to thank Isaac at the end. So we should finish in 2 minutes. So Jelena, the final words. So what the momentum? What do you think about this topic, and what your high-level concluding thoughts?
Thank you. I think it's a quite important topic for all of us. I think, as I said before, as the technology is advancing, cybersecurity threat landscape is advancing, they will be looking more into such products and such things out there in the market. Definitely, it might be harder to implement for all the reasons I said, and maybe even more reasons, given that some of us in EU institutions have to look at more things on the risk assessment, security-wise, and who are the providers, and all the other complexities that come with it. But definitely solutions like this and encryption itself is something that is very important. I cannot see future going on without such solutions and tools in place. So, and thank you again for this event. And I would like to thank all the participants as well for being with us here.
Thank you, Jelena. Stephane, how about you?
Yes, so from my point of view, it's a solution that I will definitely analyze. So to be clear, we don't have any share in this company, but I think the main goal is to reduce the attack surface. So obviously, if one end is compromised, so it's not a cyber bullet solution, and additional controls must be in place to prevent or reduce the risk that one end is compromised. But everything will be protected across the corporate network, across the public network, and the main concern has been addressed. So we were talking about complexity, cost, and security monitoring. So it's something that must be easy to install, easy to use, especially if we're talking about customers. The bank customers are normal people, and they are not advanced users, so they must be able to use this solution without any complexity. And once again, I think I will really analyze this solution once I would say our legacy email solution will be over. And to address one remark that has been sent into the public chat, yes, financial institutions are somehow very slow in changing the way they are working, because we don't change a running system. But once a decision is taken, financial institution can move very fast, because they are able to put the budget and the team in place to implement the security. And with this kind of solution, Luxembourgish-based solution, I think we have something that is really interesting.
Well, thank you both. Thank you, Jelena. Thank you, Stephane, for these concluding words. Thank you for your time. We spent a lot of time preparing this session. Thank you. I know you have to go, so please feel free to go now if you have to rush. You have been really super supportive of European innovation today, so thank you very much. I will announce the next seminar, so you can leave or stay as you wish. So thank you very much to both of you, and thank you, Leo. But Leo, you're part of the adventure, so it's different. So the next session will be on the 24th of February, and we'll talk about PKI. And it will be in the French, so we'll do another session in English on issue in PKI and how to bring the revolution and bring PKI to the level of IoT and individual. So it's all about certificates, and so it will be a new revolution that we are going to work on with our member NTX from France. Thank you. Last words to thank, a big thank to ISOC. ISOC is a big supporter of our work, and we are a big supporter of the work of ISOC. They have broadcasted live this session and on their social networks. So thank you for this, for help us go broader than our group, and with ISOC we are member of their initiative, the Global Encryption Coalition, and we are super happy with this initiative. Very happy with ISOC. Thank you, Jolly. Jolly was the guy who made this happen for this broadcast. So thank you everybody. Thank you, Gregory, from Encryption Europe, to build this together. And well, see you on the 24th of February. And throughout the year, we are going to announce a series of activities, so you should not be disappointed. Thank you, and thank you for your chat, for your question in the chat, and we meet soon. Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you all. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.